Now, normally, I would tell you, don't watch me, watch TV. But I'm on TV. So guess what? Watch me. That's right. Thank you for joining me on another installment of Pro Football Central Weekly. And there's a lot of topics to get to today in the National Football League. And so we'll get to those in a second. But as always, time for a shameless plug. Please visit the website profootballcentral.com. There is a lot of content on this site, something for everyone, over 20 podcasts for your liking. Find your team, find the podcast, listen to it. It's great content, a lot of good guests on those shows. And also, a lot of print articles. Anything that's going on in the National Football League is covered on this site. So please check out profootballcentral.com. With that out of the way, thank you for joining me. Today, I'm your host, Louis T. Let's get into business. Now, before I get to what's going on in the National Football League today, as there are a lot of topics to comb over, I have a special treat for you. Today, I will have a special guest up on the program, the first on Pro Football Central Weekly. I will talk to Redskins cornerback and punt returner Richard Crawford a little bit later on in the show, so stay tuned for that. But I want to talk about a lot of these cuts. First round of cuts have occurred in the National Football League, and teams are whittling down that roster. You're getting down to 75. After this last preseason game, every single team must conform to the roster restrictions and get down to 53-man rosters. And so a lot of cuts happened over the last 48 to 72 hours. And some of the most notable cuts: Redskins released Dante Stallworth. He had no shot at making the roster, but it still is a veteran with a name that is known around the league. I think he might be done now. You look at Braylon Edwards, a guy that I thought would make that Jets roster. They do not have a lot of talent out there in New York, but apparently he has not performed up until their standards, and so he's not going to be on that roster this year either. The Jets went out and got Steven Peterman, guard from the Detroit Lions, in free agency, and they cut him today. They did draft Brian Winters, and so I think they're going with the youth and the upside that Brian Winters brings to the table. They also cut Joe McKnight in New York. And again, the Jets don't have a lot of talent, so I'm not sure where some of these cuts are coming from, but nonetheless, Joe McKnight nor Braylon Edwards will be a part of the 2013-2014 New York Jets roster. You look at the Raiders. They cut ties with wide receiver / kick returner / punt returner Joshua Cribbs. He's no longer on this team, and he went through a world tour searching for a team to call home. He finds the Raiders, and it looks like it did not work out for Joshua Cribbs in Oakland. He's no longer on that roster. You look at Kenny Phillips, a guy that the Eagles sought after in free agency, snagged him away from the Giants. He can't stay healthy, and they figured out what the Giants already knew. Kenny Phillips simply can't stay healthy. It's something that he's always been bothered by throughout his career, and he's banged up again, and the Eagles just simply do not have the patience to wait on Kenny Phillips to get healthy. They cut ties with him as well, and so guys are being released around the league. You look at Green Bay. Graham Harrell, the backup quarterback to Aaron Rodgers. They signed Vince Young. They signed VY last week or 2 weeks ago. He comes in, plays a couple of games in the preseason, and Graham Harrell, I think this is more indicative of how they feel about Graham Harrell and less about how they feel about Vince Young. I think that Vince Young, he's a guy that doesn't know the playbook, doesn't know a lot about this offense, and yet he's performing at the same level as Graham Harrell. And the Packers said, look, there's no way that this guy off the street should be performing at the same level as you, and you've been in this offense for at least 2, maybe 3 seasons. There's no excuse for it. He hasn't stepped up and put a stranglehold on that backup quarterback position, and the Packers had seen enough from Graham Harrell. They released him. Vince Young is now your presumed backup quarterback in Green Bay, so another release that caught a lot of people's attention around the National Football League. And so a lot of guys are being cut, and keep your eyes peeled because a lot of these guys will get work. Some teams out there are desperate for help in certain situations, and they'll look to bolster their roster with some of these guys that have been let go. And they're going to be another round of cuts here shortly. And so I will keep you posted on all of the cuts that are notable as they happen. So let's talk about the Raiders quarterback situation. Let's talk about quarterback situations in general. And let's start with the Raiders. Matt Flynn has struggled mightily in this preseason, has not shown well. Raiders are not impressed with what they have seen from Matt Flynn. And I tell you what, if Terrell Pryor goes in and plays well, he's getting the start in his final preseason matchup versus the Seattle Seahawks. If he performs well throughout practice and in that game, and it's going to be backups in this game for the most part, so Terrell Pryor will have every opportunity to show that he belongs, because the Raiders probably will play their starters for a considerable amount of time. Meanwhile, the Seattle Seahawks feel like they're good enough. They probably won't play a lot of their starters past a possession or two, if that. And so Terrell Pryor has every opportunity to go out and snag this starting quarterback job. And he played really well against the Bears. Matt Flynn struggled mightily through a couple of interceptions, did not have a lot of reps. He's suffering from arm fatigue. He sat out of practice, and so it's not looking good for Matt Flynn right now. And if he loses this job to Terrell Pryor, this will be 2 jobs that he has lost in 2 seasons where he was the presumed starter and he was beat out by a guy that came off the pace out of nowhere and took the job from him. Because when he got this job in Oakland, it was his job to lose. Terrell Pryor wasn't even on the radar. And you look at this situation now, and Terrell Pryor is neck and neck with Matt Flynn with the opportunity to pull forward in this last preseason game. We'll definitely be keeping our eye out in Seattle as to what Terrell Pryor will be able to do in that final preseason game to nail down this starting quarterback position in Oakland. You look at the Jets situation. Oh, my goodness. The Jets are struggling at the quarterback position, and things were just made even worse. Their problems were exacerbated in week 3 of the preseason versus the New York Giants. Rex Ryan has taken some flack for sticking Mark Sanchez in the game in garbage time, and he got injured. And he was playing well up until that point, but he was in the game late in a preseason matchup that, of course, does not matter. But as Rex put it, it mattered to him. It mattered in this quarterback competition. And so he was out there. He takes a big shot. He gets up. The next play, he takes another shot on his shoulder, goes down in a heap. And he's day-to-day. He's okay, bruised shoulder, probably a nice little chest contusion as well. But he'll be fine. He's day-to-day. But he's injured. That's the most important part, is he's injured. And look, Mark Sanchez 100% already isn't that great of a quarterback. You take Mark Sanchez and make him 85%, who knows what you're getting. You look at Geno Smith, and this was an opportunity for him to really take hold of this competition. He gets the start against the Giants. He goes out, he throws 3 interceptions, and runs out of the back of the end zone on a safety, on a bootleg play. A total lack of awareness of where he is on the field. We haven't seen that since the days of good old Drew Stanton in Detroit and good old Dan Orlovsky in Indianapolis. And so a big blunder by Geno Smith, and he did not look good. And so this quarterback competition looks really, really bad in New York right now. You've got Geno Smith on one hand, who simply is not ready to go. He's not ready to play. But he has the most upside, and he is the future of the New York Jets in the current. He's the future as far as the next 2 or 3 seasons. If he can get it done, he'll be the future franchise quarterback for those guys. Meanwhile, Mark Sanchez is clinging to his New York Jets career, and he wants another shot, but he doesn't look good either, and he just got injured. And so you don't know what you're getting from Mark Sanchez. And then guess what you got sitting down in the background, waiting for his opportunity? Good old McElroy. And so Greg McElroy is looking for his opportunity as well. And so that whole situation in New York with the Jets is a mess. And who knows when this thing will be solved. They have to make a decision here in the next week and a half, because the season will be upon us in the next 2 weeks. And so they've got one more preseason game, and then they've got to make a decision on who's going to be the starting quarterback in New York. My money's on Mark Sanchez. If you want the best opportunity to win, you put the veteran in, you allow him to go out there and do what he can. He's not going to help this team win. I think Mark Sanchez has reached his limit in New York, and he's going to come out, he's going to struggle initially. They're going to get off to a 0-5 start, and then they're going to put in Geno Smith. And I think you just need to close the chapter, close the book on Mark Sanchez and his career in New York, and just not look backwards. Go forwards with Geno Smith and never look back. And I think that's ultimately what's going to happen. I could be wrong. They could decide to go with the youth of Geno Smith and the upside and see if he can get it done in 2013. Whatever the case may be, Rex Ryan is looking to save his job. And whatever quarterback he thinks gives him the best opportunity to do exactly that, that's who's going to be your day one starter for the New York Jets. You look at another quarterback situation that just turned from good to bad to worse in over a 2-week span. And, of course, I'm talking about the Buffalo Bills quarterback situation. Look, E.J. Manuel played really well, very exceptional in those first 2 preseason games. Looked really efficient against the Indianapolis Colts, did the same thing against the Minnesota Vikings. And then after that game, we learned that he needs some kind of minor knee surgery. And, look, I was once told this by a very wise man. There's no such thing as minor knee surgery, okay? Anytime you go under the knife, it's a big deal. And so E.J. Manuel isn't probably going to be ready for the season opener. I do not think he will be back for the season opener. And so everything was turned over to Kevin Corn on the Cob. And look, if you're a Bills fan, you're thinking this is why we went out and got this guy in case of an emergency. But if you're a fan of any other team around the league, you're saying to yourself, you don't want to play Kevin Cobb. And they don't have a choice. He goes in, he plays in the 3rd preseason game, and he does what Kevin Cobb does. He gets a concussion. And so he could be out indefinitely. We don't know how severe this concussion is, but we do know that he has a prior history with concussions. And so he could be on the shelf for 4, 5, 6 weeks at a time. And so we don't know when he'll be ready to play football. There were talks about him potentially hanging it up because of these concussions. And so there's no telling when Kevin Corn on the Cob will be back for the Buffalo Bills. So now it looks like, and this is unbelievable, the quarterback for week 1 versus the New England Patriots at home could be Jeff Tuel, rookie quarterback out of Washington State. How did we get here, people? Jeff Tuel? Really? So, I mean, the Buffalo Bills quarterback situation went from good, with E.J. Manuel looking very sharp early on, to bad, him getting injured and Kevin Cobb having to assume the role as starting quarterback, to worse, with E.J. Manuel being on the shelf, Kevin Cobb going down with a concussion, and now Jeff Tuel, a rookie quarterback that you had no intentions of playing in 2013, possibly having to man up the starting quarterback position. Are you kidding me? Buffalo Bills fans, wow. I tell you, the longest tenured team in terms of missing the postseason has essentially sealed their fate for 2013 before the season has even gotten underway. What a train wreck that quarterback situation is in Buffalo. Welcome to the NFL, head coach Doug Marrone and GM Doug Whaley. Hope you're ready for what's in store for you in 2013, because it's going to be a very, very rocky and bumpy road with that quarterback situation being the way it is right now. So that is a little bit of what I wanted to get to in terms of football news. And there's so many things going on. A lot of teams looked impressive. Some teams didn't look that impressive in the 3rd week of the preseason. But either way, the football season is drawing even closer. And before you know it, it'll be here. It'll be September 5th, and we'll be getting ready for Broncos and Ravens. And so these last round of cuts will take place sometime between Thursday and Sunday, and teams will be ready to rock and roll with their 53-man rosters and will be set to start the 2013-2014 NFL regular season. And so I'm going to take a short break, and I'll be right back, and then I'll come back with the exclusive one-on-one interview with Redskins cornerback Richard Crawford. See you in a bit. This is a Pro Football Central exclusive. Others talk about the players. We talk to the players. I'm here joined by Washington Redskins cornerback and punt returner Richard Crawford. How you doing today, Richard?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. Wish we were meeting under better circumstances. Pro Football Central and myself definitely send you our deepest condolences on your the news that you tore your LCL and you'll miss the 2013 NFL season. How are your spirits right now?
Oh, I'm great, man. If something that happens, I just have to come back from it and be a better player. That's all I can do. I can't worry about anything else.
Definitely. I'm glad to hear that you're in great spirits after that devastating news. I don't think a lot of Redskins fans really know the story of Richard Crawford and how you emerged and got to where you were going into this season. And so I want to take a trip back and kind of work our way up to the current events to where you are now. And I want to go back to draft day when you were drafted 7th round selection out of SMU. How did you find out the news? Who did you talk to, and what were your feelings?
I talked to Coach Shanahan, Coach Haslett, Raheem Morris, Richard Hightower, and a couple other coaches. They just told me I was drafted, and just being drafted is the greatest feeling in the world. You work for a goal your whole life to be in the NFL. It doesn't matter what round you get drafted. It's just the opportunity you get, and I took the opportunity. I ran with it and tried to make the most out of it I could. So I'm thankful for my coaches and Redskin organization for that.
Definitely. And every time I look at players when they're drafted and when they come into the league, you notice when guys, they get it and you realize, hey, this guy can play in this league. And I know that everyone that makes it to the NFL feels like they can play in this league because they made it that far. But when was the moment that you realized, hey, I can play with these guys, I belong in this league, I have my Richard Crawford, he belongs in the league moment? When was that moment for you?
My very first preseason game, I got an interception. I was in with some of the starters against Buffalo. I was like, I could play in this league, and then I kept making plays that game, and I was just like, I could play in this league. It just made me want to work harder, study more film, and study my opponent, and just learn more. Because I knew it wasn't going to be that easy every game. Certain games was going to play better opponent or more difficult people. So I knew it was going to get harder. And so it just made me want to work harder to be better, but I knew I could play in the league after that.
And that's the same exact moment that I had for you as well. That Buffalo preseason game, the first one, you had a nice punt return in that game. You had an interception. I said, this guy belongs in the National Football League. He belongs on this roster. And I really saw big things from you from that point forward. So when was the moment where you realized I really have a legitimate shot at making this roster?
In training camp, I was guarding Santana Moss the whole time, and when I started kind of holding my own against him after a while, I was like, I can play in this league, if I can guard Tana, he has almost 10,000 yards receiving in his career, I can keep up with a lot of guys, so that's when I really realized I could play in this league. Everything is about work, and, just made me want to work harder and harder, and anytime you just encounter anything that's a positive, it makes you want to work harder.
Absolutely. I felt like after that Buffalo game and I saw you continue to progress, I knew they looked at you as a punt returner, but I saw the potential as a guy that could come in and play some solid corner for the Washington Redskins. And so I really thought you had a realistic shot at making this 53-man roster, and you did. Let's talk about the biggest moment for you in 2012, and we all know what that is. And I thought that was a turning point in the season for the Redskins, a big game at home. That was one of those games that could have went either way. And you make the big return against the Ravens, 64 yards in overtime to set up the game-winning score. Let's talk about that play. What were you feeling? What did you see? And you got to talk about the punter. You can't let the punter get you. He got you. It looked like you had a fridge on your back. Let's talk about that play and how it all went down.
What was it? Wall left. Danny called it. They kicked. Sam Cook kept out kicking his coverage. He's kind of known for doing that. He out kicks his coverage a lot. So I got the ball, made the first guy miss. Seen the lane, hit the lane, made another guy miss, cut back. And when I cut back, I was just got tired. I hadn't played for 7 weeks, so I think it was more me not being tired, more me just the adrenaline kicking in, like the opposite way, though. So
yeah, definitely.
I think that's what happened with that.
Yeah, I agree. I said it's been a while. He hasn't been, running around out there. And I don't think people understand how long the football field is. And if you're not in the proper condition, that thing can seem like a million miles. And by the time you got to midfield, I could see you running out of gas. I was hoping you could give him a stiff arm or something. But by that time, you were just gassed, I guess.
Yes, sir.
So you make it to the playoffs, and it's a disappointing end to the season, and you work your way up the depth chart. You get an interception in the final week of the season against the Cowboys, and you get into the postseason. Tell me what that postseason experience was like. I know you haven't been with the club. This was going to be your second season, but they haven't been in the postseason for a very long time. What was the feeling like in that locker room last year going into the postseason?
It was real good. It felt like a different culture. We just felt like winners, and we just felt like we had to hold the standards of being winners. So we were really it's really a blessing anytime you go into the playoffs. Because only 12 teams go. So we knew we had done something special, and we had to continue to do something special. And it's just the whole culture of DC changed. Everybody was behind us, and they wanted us to do great things. Even when we lost the game, I felt like everybody in DC felt like, well, we have something going here. We have young players, mixed with veteran players, like Coach Shanahan always does. And we're going to be a successful team from here on out.
I definitely echo those sentiments. I think that what you guys were able to accomplish was huge. And my thing is now, what's the feeling in the locker room now? Is there a sense of entitlement? Is there a sense of hungriness to get back to the postseason? Do you feel like you are still the hunter? Being that you won the division, you're now the hunted. What's the feeling like in the locker room? What's the guys saying? How are you guys feeling going into the 2013 season?
We definitely feel like the hunter because, it's only been one season. Well, it was only one season that we had won. We still have a lot of people on the team that was here for a long time that when we weren't good, so, they can make sure that nobody feels entitled to winning. Every game is won, is earned. A win in the NFL is a blessing. I learned that from Danny Smith. And, you can't ever cheat your way to a win. You got to work your tail off to get a win, So I feel like that's all there in the locker room, and everybody understands it. And it's showing right now in the preseason, Everybody's going out there, busting their butt, and we're showing up on the field. That's all you can ever ask for.
Definitely. I feel like the sky's the limit for this team if they can stay relatively healthy. And if like you said, guys are motivated and focused, I definitely feel like this Redskins team can accomplish a lot in 2013. So let's fast track back to the present now. And on Saturday against the Buffalo Bills, you field the first punt, and it looks like you tweaked something. What happened on that initial punt where you came out of the game?
It was just a injury that I had, I aggravated a little bit, but I was fine. Then I came back in the game, and then on the punt, I got hurt. It was absolutely my fault. I did something I never do. I tried to turn back around, turn field, and when that happened, he jumped on my back, my leg got caught, and then it snapped, Leg only takes so much force, so it was a learning experience, I've learned a lot from it. It just makes me want to work to get back to where I was and just be better than what I was, honestly, Just use the time I have and this opportunity I have to get better as a player mentally and physically, so that's what I'm trying to do right now.
And that's the best attitude to have. And I feel like you were just hitting your stride. And I think people were underrating you as a corner as well. I felt like you were a playmaking corner, a guy that if he gets the opportunity to make a play on the football, you would make a play. And so I definitely am anxious to see you get back out there and see how you will perform in 2014, because I think you can definitely have a huge impact on this team, not only in the punt return game, but definitely on defense as well. And so we wish you the best, speedy recovery, and can't wait to see you get back there on the field in 2014. Thank you for joining us today, Richard Crawford, cornerback and punt returner of the Washington Redskins.
Thank you for your time, sir, and thank you for the interview.
Hey, no problem. Thank you. Have a good one, man. Take care. Very disappointing how his season was cut short abruptly with that LCL tear. He's going to miss the entire 2013-2014 season, but as you can see, he's in great spirits, and he knows exactly what he has to do. He has to work hard to get back to where he was as a football player, and I thought this guy was starting to get it as a cornerback, as a punt returner, and I expect big things from Richard Crawford as he comes back from that LCL tear. And myself and the Pro Football Central family all extend our best wishes to Richard Crawford, and we hope for a speedy recovery. I thank him for that interview, and we wish him nothing but the best. And I expect big things from him in 2014 when he comes back from that injury. He's a really good young football player that has a bright future in front of him, and I expect him to come back better than ever after this injury. And so, with that being said, that's another edition of Pro Football Central Weekly. I thank you for joining me. And for myself and the staff at ProFootballCentral.com, I say to you, have a good one. See you next time. And we are Pro Football Central. Take care. See you next time.